Drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. The afternoon sun glitters on the lake, painting gold across ripples that ought to be peaceful, but Jack's afternoon is anything but. He's crouched on the roof, tightening the last bracket of his new solar array, when tires scream on gravel like a teenager's first burnout. Ducks scatter wings, slapping water. The slam of a car door rattles the dock, and then comes her voice, sharp, accusing, loud enough to alert wildlife 3 counties away. Karen HOA president stormtroops toward him in a cream blazer, dark skirt, and a sun visor she probably thinks makes her look sophisticated. In truth, historians still argue whether visors ever made anyone look dignified or just like they're trying to sell lemonade at a yard sale. She jabs a finger at his roof. You can't just slap those things up without HOA approval. Jack lays down his wrench calm. It's my property, my panels. There's nothing in the bylaws. But she's already pulling her phone like a gunslinger. I'm calling the cops. 10 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser crunches up the drive. Karen launches into her speech about property values and aesthetics. The deputy listens, adjusts his sunglasses, and says evenly, "Ma'am, HOA rules aren't laws. If it meets code, there's nothing we can do." Her bravado crumples. Tears brim. Jack almost feels bad, almost. Then the deputy tips his hat, advises Jack to keep paperwork tight, and drives off. But Karen doesn't retreat. She plots. 3 mornings later, Jack sips coffee on his porch and spots her van creeping by. Inside, 2 women with clipboards. They stare at his cabin like it's an exhibit at the Hall of Crimes Against Visual Harmony. Jack strolls down, waves. "Morning, ladies." Karen lowers her sunglasses with the drama of a soap opera. "We're evaluating the visual harmony of the neighborhood." He nods like she's just critiqued his lawn gnomes. They drive away unsatisfied. Days later, a 3-page HOA letter arrives demanding removal of the panels within 14 days. The kicker: she cites Section 8.2, the holiday decoration clause. She's equating his solar array to inflatable Santas. Jack laughs, but his folder of permits and the state solar rights law burn like quiet ammo in his hand. Then comes the storm. One night, rocks smash into tempered glass. Panels fracture, hissing softly as they cool. Jack stands in the dark, anger flaring, before disappointment sags heavy. Fear creeps in, not of repairs, but of how far she'll go. He calls the sheriff, files the report. Hours later, a text pings, "Take them down, or next time it won't be just the glass." The next morning, a paper flaps on his maple tree, $500 daily fines, signed in Karen's flourish. Jack folds it neatly into his pocket. He's not bowing out. When a Channel 8 news car barrels into his drive camera, blinking red, Jack looks straight into the lens. "I followed the law. I'm not leaving because someone wants to control sunlight." Karen arrives mid-interview, visor glinting, perfume thick enough to fumigate mosquitoes. She snaps about harmony and rules. Jack counters with statutes. The camera drinks it all. Neighbors whisper. Later that night, as Jack watches the segment air, Karen leaves him a voicemail, voice dripping with ice. "You've made me look weak. That was your mistake. See you at the board meeting." The board meeting feels less like community governance and more like a showdown in a spaghetti western. Folding chairs scrape, neighbors murmur, and Karen bangs a gavel she bought off Amazon like she's Judge Judy on tour. The only item on her agenda, Jack's unauthorized panels. She proposes a bylaw banning panels visible from lake or road, conveniently impossible for Jack's slope-sitting cabin. But Jack arrives armed with copies of the state's solar rights statute, highlighted like a college student cramming for finals. He calmly hands them down the table. Linda Park, the treasurer, leans in with interest. Mark Reynolds, the vice president, frowns thoughtfully. Bill Harper huffs like he swallowed a trumpet. Sarah, the secretary, chews her pen nervously. Karen doesn't even pick hers up. Neighbors rise to speak Tom jokes. The panels keep his coffee maker alive during outages, while Mia, a nurse with asthma, quietly explains how solar could power her oxygen concentrator when the grid fails. A hush falls. Even the squeaky clubhouse fan seems to pause. Historians still argue whether that moment marked the start of Karen's unraveling, or whether it was when she realized her visor looked more villainous than victorious. The board votes. Karen and Bill say yes, everyone else says no. Motion fails. Karen's gavel cracks like a snapped pencil. But Jack senses the storm isn't gone, it's gone underground. 2 nights later, shattered glass sparkles on his roof again. Another panel wrecked. A dead fish nailed with a note lands on his porch. Next time, it's not the lake that loses. He forwards everything to Deputy Harris, who advises cameras. Jack installs 4 linked to his phone. That very week, at 1:43 a.m., the feed catches 2 hooded figures creeping up his drive with spray paint and a crowbar. Jack hits the floodlight, steps out with his shotgun pointed down but visible. "Smile for the camera," he says. They bolt. The footage becomes dynamite. At the next HOA meeting, Jack demands the floor citing statute numbers like he's reading baseball stats. The lights dim, the projector hums, and the room gasps as the grainy video plays, figures skulking, spray paint, shaking, crowbar raised. One looks back just long enough for his face to flash clear. Someone whispers, "That's Brian," pointing at a red-faced 20-something in the 3rd row. Jack doesn't gloat. He stacks HOA bylaws on the table and points to missing vote records for the fence project Karen's crew has been hammering along his lake view. He reveals $18 to $400 funneled to her cousin's company. Linda, calm as a librarian, confirms it all. The room erupts, neighbors signing Tom's recall petition like it's the Declaration of Independence. Karen slams her gavel, declaring it out of order. But no one's listening. For the first time, she's not in control. Jack doesn't celebrate. He watches steady as the neighborhood chooses sunlight over shadows. That night, he emails the same evidence to his lawyer, the county auditor, and Channel 8 News. He finally feels like he's playing offense, but the calm lasts only minutes. A new smash rings out. Another solar panel cracked wide, a grapefruit-sized rock glistening damp in the yard. This time it isn't just vandalism, it's desperation. The courthouse smells like old paper and lemon polish, the kind of scent that insists on seriousness. Karen arrives in a navy blazer, jaw-tight lawyer in tow. Jack sits with his attorney, Mark Davis, who moves his files like chess pieces. The judge, steel-haired and sharp-eyed, opens Lakeshore HOA versus Jack Turner. Karen's lawyer paints him as a rogue rule-breaker lowering property values. Karen nods along like she's grieving the death of community aesthetics. Mark counters with 1 sheet of paper, Jack's signed county permit. He lays it down like an ace of spades. Then comes the state's solar rights statute prohibiting unreasonable restrictions. Finally, he flips to HOA minutes that show nothing. No vote on the fence, no notice, no authorization. Historians still argue whether the judge's arched eyebrow at that moment was more devastating than her later words. Linda Park testifies steady as stone about misuse of funds and threats, disguised as official notices. The judge issues a temporary injunction. No fines, no fence work, no removal of panels until ruling. Not a full victory, but the tide turns. Outside, cameras swarm. Jack tells reporters, "This isn't about breaking rules. It's about whether rules are used as guides or weapons." Karen storms past, her silence louder than any speech. 2 weeks later, the recall vote arrives. The clubhouse is packed, neighbors buzzing like cicadas. Tom collects signatures, Mia speaks about health and dignity, and Jack shows security footage of vandalism. The petition passes in a landslide. Karen doesn't wait for the final count. She storms out into rain visor, tilted like a sinking ship's mast. A month later, cedar fence boards come down, replaced panels gleam on Jack's roof, and Linda is sworn in as new president. A new bylaw protects renewable energy installations explicitly. Jack sits on his porch, beer cold in hand, watching his panels hum quietly. Tom ambles over. Feels different now, doesn't it? Jack nods. It's not just the panels. It's knowing the neighborhood's ours again. The lake ripples, soft wind combs through pines, and for the first time in months, silence feels safe again. The story softens here like dusk sliding over water. Jack leans back in his chair, eyes half closed, the hum of his panels now a lullaby instead of a battle cry. The lake stretches wide and calm, mirroring the last light of day in wavering gold. It's strange how something as simple as glass and sunlight could spark months of conflict, yet also become the emblem of quiet victory. He breathes slower now. The fence is gone. The rocks swept aside, the dead fish long forgotten. What remains is a community stitched back together, however clumsily, by neighbors who finally realized silence wasn't safety, it was surrender. And when one person stood, others found their own footing. That is the nature of change. It starts small, stubborn, almost invisible, and then it gathers weight like a stone rolling downhill. Jack thinks of Mia, her quiet courage, of Tom, his loyalty disguised as humor, of Linda finally stepping from the margins, even of Karen, whose grip unraveled the moment she tried to tighten it. In every story, there's a turning point where fear bends into resilience, and he knows this was his. The night deepens. Crickets return their steady rhythm, softer than any gavel. The panels above gleam faintly in the moonlight, catching silver instead of sun, still promising tomorrow's light. He lingers in the quiet content to let the moment stretch unhurried. If you're listening now, let the sound fade with you. Let the ripples on that lake carry you gently. The smell of pine drift in the hum of a cabin powered by sunlight whisper reassurance. Close your eyes, rest easy. For tonight the story is settled, and peace is the only thing left to keep. End of script. Sweet dreams.